Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Della Parsons all about her life of adventure and how she quit her job and ended up sailing around the world. She's going to share more with us about what she learned from this experience. Della, where are you based at the moment?
So I'm based down in Gosport, which is where the Clipper Around the World Yacht Race offices are, which is the company that I now work for, having previously first got involved with them in 2008 when I applied to take part in the Clipper Around the World Yacht Race myself.
Oh, it's so incredible. I love the fact that you went out, you signed up for this race, and now you're actually working for the company as well. So obviously, I want to discuss that in more detail. But actually, let's just find out a little bit more about you. I mean, how would you introduce yourself?
How would I introduce myself? As a person or as a professional? That's an interesting one, really. As a person, I guess I am somebody who I would say I'm somebody who is trying to live my life to the full, I think is probably the right way of putting it. I have taken chances in my life. I've been fairly adventurous, both in terms of job roles and pushing myself hard in that realm, but also in just trying to kind of explore the world, push my own limits, have some fun, have some excitement. I've tried not to be too chained down and let myself get stuck into what I call the boring sort of humdrum life. And I think that there are times in my life when I have had my best adventures as a direct result of realizing that I had got stuck into a bit of a rut in normal life. And I'm one of these people, I think, that has the need to shake things up every so often and go out and have a real adventure.
Oh, I love it. Where do you think that comes from?
I have no idea where that comes from. I think it's just an innate thing inside me. You know, I think I don't know whether I'm perhaps more in tune with it than some people, but I think, we're not built to kind of get in our cars or get on the bus or the train every day and go and spend 8 or 10 hours in an office and then come home and cook and go to sleep. That's not what life is about, is it? But I think it's very easy to fall into that if we're not careful. So I think it comes from, a natural human curiosity to explore, to see new things, to take on new challenges. I think I'm also driven a little bit by nature. I know I'm happiest in nature. I know I'm happiest in big, wide open spaces. I love seeing trees and fields and forests. Clearly now I've discovered a love of the sea. In fact, I've always had a love of water. As a small child, whenever we were at the beach, my mum struggled to keep me out of the water and tried to get me in my swimsuit first before I dove in. But I've always just spent hours kind of sitting, looking at the horizon. And I think there's always been this little element of what's over there, what's over the horizon. I want to see, I want to travel over there. So I think I've perhaps just always been a bit of a traveller somewhere in the depths of me.
Oh, I love it when you're talking about your mum and, being down at the beach and, loving the sea. When you were younger, when you were a child, were you out exploring? Were you out in nature? Was that a family thing that you were doing? Were you brought up in the countryside?
I wasn't brought up in the countryside as such. I grew up in a small market town north of Bristol, a place called Thornbury. So there was a field at the back of our houses, but actually it was soon developed into a housing estate. But I think I've always been a tomboy, so I've always kind of actually been in a male sort of dominated area. There were other girls who lived in the houses around where we were, but they liked playing with dolls and dressing up and doing hair. And I was always, wanting to join in with the boys, playing cricket, playing football, climbing trees, going on explorations. And actually we did have a great group of friends. We did used to, we would host our own street mini Olympics. In Olympics year, we would all kind of like go on big bike rides together. And from Thornbury, we would go over the Severn Bridge into Wales and play hide and seek at Chepstow Castle, and that's quite a long way for quite small kids to go on cycles. So we did used to kind of build, our own little adventure playgrounds at the local park and things like that. My dad was very into nature. My dad was very into wildlife and conservation, and although I didn't grow up with him, I think that side of me comes from him as well. He's sort of very keen, sort of amateur naturalist and bird watcher, etc. So yeah, I think I've always loved nature. I never really had a great inkling to kind of know more about it. I never wanted to put names to birds or trees and stuff like that, but I've always enjoyed being in and around nature as a kid. So I think that as I've got older has become bigger for me, that need to go and climb a mountain, to sail across an ocean, to walk across a desert or whatever. It's part challenge, and I like challenging myself, but it's part wanting to kind of really be in contact with the natural world as well.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about, living life to the full, and you talked about sort of these adventurous jobs that you've been on, and you're exploring the world. Can you think back to maybe your first adventure, whether it was a solo challenge or solo traveling or something that you did for you?
I think my first sort of real, it's so hard actually to think back. I'm just trying to think now. Actually, even I think the first year I left home when I was 18, I think later that year I had done a school ski trip when I was 15 or 16 and had loved it. And then when I left home when I was 18, I think later that year, I went into student travel place and booked myself on a ski trip to Italy. So I booked myself onto the ski trip completely on my own, but sort of feeling fairly confident that, I would meet people on the way, and I'm sure there'd be people there that I would get to talk to. And looking back on that now, I think that was a slightly scary, crazy thing. It didn't occur to me at the time that it was particularly brave or adventurous, but I did. I just, hopped on the coach at the appointed time and found that before we'd even made it to Italy, I think it was, that I'd become friends with a New Zealand couple, 4 Mexican girls, and a whole bunch of American students that were over here on a big kind of 3-month trip to the UK. And we all were best mates before we even arrived at the hotel, and spent the whole week skiing together, having a laugh together, and catching up with each other in the UK once we got back. So that was a kind of mini adventure, I suppose.
Oh, do you know, I love that. Doing something like that at 18 is just amazing. And I think it's weird when people think, it's so brave of you to do it. And sometimes you just don't think it's anything out of the extraordinary. It's just like, I just wanted to go off and do it. So let's talk a little bit about the sailing. I mean, have you always sailed?
No, I'd never sailed before. So I got to the ripe old age of 40, 41, had never sailed before. But again, like a couple of stages earlier in my life, I'd got myself into a bit of a rut. I was stuck into a sort of management job, which had been quite exciting a few years ago, and then had become very humdrum. It's all settled down. I was kind of left with the dirge of hundreds of emails a day, and really feeling like it wasn't feeding me. And I've always been someone who I think needs to do something that I feel is giving something back to me as well as everything that I'm giving to it. And I knew I needed a shake-up. I knew I needed to kind of leave my job and make a change, but I wasn't kind of brave enough to do it. I was very comfortable where I lived. I loved my neighbours. I liked the people that I worked with. I just knew the job wasn't kind of really right for me anymore. And the year before, we'd seen this thing called the Clipper Yacht Race come into Hull, and I was living in Hull at the time. The race had come in, all the boats had come into Hull Marina. I was working for the BBC at the time. We'd done a lot of news stories on it, done a lot of coverage on it. And I'd sort of semi-followed the boats across the first half of the 2007-8 race and dipped in. There was a locally sponsored boat called the Hull and Humber yacht. So we were doing updates on how that boat was doing. And it still didn't occur to me, despite all the publicity and all the stories that we're doing on it, I didn't realise that people like me, as in people that had no previous sailing experience, could take part in the race, and all you had to do was apply. You could take part in one leg, which is roughly a month, or you could take part in the full circumnavigation, which was roughly 11 months. And I had no idea really that you could do that. And then suddenly one day it sank in. I thought, I could do this. This is the man. I could decide to apply, and I could do this. What a great adventure. Why didn't I think of this before? So I filled in the application form. Really just, I don't think I'd even made a definite decision at that point to do it, but I filled in the application form as a kind of, well, let's see. Came back, and it so happened that the recruitment manager was in Hull the next day in our building, and I thought, well, this is too much of a coincidence. So I ended up having a chat with him. We ended up going for a beer, and before I knew it, he was like, well, give me £100 deposit and you're in. And at that point, I had no money at all. And the leg you have to pay to take part. So the training and the cost of the leg was about £10,000 at the time. And I just finished off paying a car loan, which I paid off over the last 3 or 4 years for about the same amount of money. And I thought, I haven't got that money. But I thought, do you know what? I've just finished off paying a loan for the same amount. I've done it for a car. Why wouldn't I do the same thing for a great adventure? And it felt a little bit wrong to spend that money on what I thought was kind of, a bit of a big holiday. But at the same time, I thought, well, why not? Why not? This looks like it's going to be an amazing thing. So I just took the attitude and I said, right, I'm going to go for it. So I did it. I booked in to do my first week of training in the October, and didn't know what to expect at all. Came down. We were training on the slightly smaller yachts, the 60-foot yachts. Very basic condition, no washing, no privacy, sleeping in bunks, dealing with kind of 9 other people that you've never met before, and all learning, how to run these lines on this sailing yacht that I'd never been on before, and having to learn a new language. But I absolutely loved it. We had some fairly big conditions within the first few days. We were out in the English Channel in a gusting force 8 wind, and the boat was really heeled over, and the side of the boat was disappearing beneath the water, and I had no idea whether that was how it should be or not. And a few people were frightened, and quite a few people were being sick, and I was just hanging on with a big grin on my face, feeling, woohoo, this is ever so slightly scary, but very, very exciting. And from that time on, I just completely loved sailing, and I've spent the last God knows how many years really thinking, why had I not discovered sailing earlier in my life? Because I just think it would have been a much, much bigger part of my life if I'd come across it earlier.
Oh, I was going to say, you talked about, I'm always thinking about the difference when you actually said before, that you weren't brave enough to do it. And you mentioned that you were in a little bit of a rut. Mm. And I think that's really interesting, because I can imagine a lot of people can get into ruts or situations, but it's how you get out of it. And you mentioned you've been in a few little ruts throughout the years, and you've always sort of managed to get out of it. How have you done that? What have you learned, or what are the tips or tricks that you've got? Is there anything that you could share with us about that?
That's really interesting. I think there have been a couple of times in my life before where I already talked about sort of getting stuck in a bit of a rut, and I think we can do that. And I've been a bit of a target setter, I suppose, in a very broad scope. I'm a bit of a list girl. If I need to get things done, I do need a bit of a list to cross things off. Although I've always been a kind of resolution setter in the new year and hardly ever done any of those things anyway. So I think you have to be very careful about what you say you want to do. But I think for me, it has been about just getting bored with life, or something's happening. And I hate to say this, but certainly the first time when I need to make a change, it was like man trouble, and I've been involved in the relationship and got a bit burnt. And I think that, on top of achieving my initial goals in my job, I'd sort of set myself some tasks. I said, right, I want to be directing live television by the time I'm 23, and I kind of got there. And I kind of thought, well, what now? I'd kind of achieved all the goals that I'd set to that point. So I'd got to this stage where I had no more specific goals left to achieve. I didn't know where my next step was going to be, and I didn't want to push myself to move further on just for the sake of doing it, just for the sake of kind of keeping to try and kind of go up the ladder. And so I think it was about, it was about other stuff happening in my personal life, but also kind of really kind of going, well, should I keep pushing on? Should I keep trying to move up? Or actually can I be happy at the level that I've achieved already? And I just suddenly felt it was almost like a complete reverse to kind of going on the next course, pushing for the next job. The complete reverse of that was to kind of go, actually, I'm going to take a year out and think about it. And I'd never taken a year out, hadn't gone to university, I'd worked for it straight from school. So although I was only sort of 23, 24, I'd had 6 years straight of working hard in the industry. And I thought, actually, I want some me time. I want to have a bit of time out to reflect and think about where's the next stage of my life. And I think there's always a lot of coincidence in this. I think around the time I must have mentioned it to a friend or a colleague at work, and somebody then said to me, there's a chance you might be able to get a career break. They don't like to advertise it, but, I'm pretty sure I've read somewhere that, if for the right reasons, you can apply to have a career break. So I did a bit of digging around our sort of intranet, spoke to HR and found out that you could, in fact, apply for a career break of different lengths. But actually, from an employer's point of view, I think it's almost easier to give you a career break for a longer time. 2 or 3 months is a difficult time to backfill. But, if you're away for 6 months or a year, then there's a real opportunity for employers to kind of to bring someone a bit more junior up and give them an opportunity. And it also saves them money because they're going to be paying them less as well. But so I think, I did a bit of thinking about that and thought actually a year out would be great. So I organised this year out. I made an application form. I had it approved. They said, when do you want to start from? I said, in 3 months' time, or whenever it was. Hadn't decided what I was going to do with it at all. I just thought, I'm going to have a year out. And then as it kind of got a bit nearer, and some of my friends said to me, what are you going to do with your year off? And I was like, oh, actually, I really don't know. And I'm starting to panic a little bit. I'm starting to think, what am I going to do with it? And also, if I am going to go away and go traveling, what I would do with my house, because I've got a mortgage. And I did have a little bit of a meltdown in terms of, this is the panic about how I'm going to get to the start line of my great year out. And I've not made any decisions. And a friend came around and sat down with a bottle of wine and said, okay, you need to rent this house out. What do you need to do? You need to get in touch with some letting agents and you need to talk to them and get them around and have a look. And so kind of friends kind of sat me down and made a list and said, this is what you need to do, because once your house is rented out, your mortgage is covered. You need to talk to the mortgage company. You need to tell them that you're renting it out for a year and all of that. So they kind of helped me with the steps. And then and I think somebody else in a different conversation said to me, what about Camp America? Because I've always had a thing about wanting to go to America. So I looked into that and applied to do Camp America. So very quickly made an application form, had a sort of interview with them. And because of my background in sort of in drama, I'd done a lot of drama as a kid and a lot of theatre and TV, that I got offered a job in a theatre and arts camp in Pennsylvania. So I went and worked for 3 months there, did 2 months travelling afterwards across the eastern side of the States. Came over because my best friend was getting married, so came home. She got married, and then I'd also then applied subsequently through that to a ski company that I'd been on skiing holiday with, and got a job as a chalet girl, and then flew out to France and worked for a ski season for the 6 months. So that was my year. I did the summer in the States pretty well, and then went over to the Alps and did a winter working for a ski company. So it actually didn't cost me really much money at all. A little bit of traveling in the States, but I was paid for most of my year off. So as long as I had my mortgage covered, actually the year out really didn't cost me very much at all, and I had some great adventures.
Oh, fantastic. And was this when you were 24, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, amazing.
And then some friends came out. It's funny, actually. Some friends came out to see me at the end of just coming towards the end of my ski season, just when I was due to come back to work in the next couple of months. And they sort of updated me on stuff going on at work. And they said, oh, ready to come back, looking forward to coming back. And I was like, well, actually, no, I'm having really great time. This kind of life working away from work is fantastic. And one of them said to me, well, there's they're looking to make some redundancies in engineering and technical back at work. So they're looking for volunteers. So I phoned my boss from France and said, could I apply in theory? And he said yes. And I said, if I did, what would I get? And he said this. So I applied for redundancy whilst I still wasn't working there, technically, and got it, came back, worked out 3 months' notice that following summer. And then in that 3 months, thought, right, what am I going to do now? Decided I was going to go back for a second ski season with a company who wanted me to go back. And I had a 3-month gap between leaving my job and skiing again. And so I spent a chunk of my money, flew down to South Africa or Harare, and I spent 3 months traveling across Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia. I joined up with an overland truck and kind of cruised around with those guys and saw the Okavango Delta and the Namib Desert, and just probably one of the best trips ever, actually.
Oh, fantastic. That's so fun. So with the sailing, so just sort of almost taking it back to the sailing, and you heard about the round the world, the yacht race. You've had the conversation with the recruiter. You find out a leg's going to cost you £10,000, which is a big sum of money to do. What sort of thoughts go through your head? Do you weigh up the pros and the cons? Like how do you analyze whether or not that you were going to do this and commit to doing it?
Right. Yeah. How do you analyze about going on an adventure like that? That's a really interesting one. I think whether it's a good thing or not for me, I don't think I've ever really over-analyzed anything. I think I'm a gut instinct girl. And I think for me, that's probably the reason why I have done the things that I've done. I sort of almost make a snap decision. And that's much easier to do. I'm a single person. I've got a partner now, but I've never had kids or a family. So from that point of view, when you don't have to worry about dependence, it makes it much easier. But for me, it was just a gut instinct. And when I came and did that first, the gut instinct was there to have an adventure. And, I've always wanted to sail, and I've always wanted to find out what was over the horizon. So signing up or applying to do a leg of the race was a kind of no-brainer initially. It seemed crazy, exciting. I couldn't believe that someone that had never sailed before could generally get on board and race one of these boats with a team of people. But once I'd done my first week of training, for me, the whole gut instinct no-brainer was I have to sail around the world, because I just knew within every fibre of my being that I was going to love it, that I needed to do it, that I, somewhere deep inside me, I wanted to be a sailing circumnavigator. And I felt that the vehicle was right in terms of, it's good organization. There was clearly training there. There's backup. There's other boats that you're racing against. So there's, you're not on your own out in the middle of the ocean. You've got a team of you on board. And from the very first week, you don't know who you're going to meet, but it became very obvious that, this great bunch of people from all over the world in different ages and backgrounds, you're all like-minded people and you're all taking this on, but you just gel and bond so quickly. I knew that the teamwork and the friendships that I was going to make was going to be one of the best outcomes of the whole adventure as well. So for me, it's more about a gut instinct and kind of making a commitment to do it. And then once I do that, I then kind of fret and worry about how I'm going to make it happen. But, I'm very much, if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. Having said that, I do recognize that there are a lot of pitfalls on the way. And in my current job, where I now recruit, I now interview people that want to apply to do what I did, to sail around the world, whether it's a leg or 2 legs or the whole thing. I do recognize that for a lot of people, you might want to do it. You might feel that it's within your bones to do. But looking back now, sort of with a bit older, a bit wiser, perhaps more to lose, I do know that sometimes the hardest part is that bit between making that decision and saying, yes, I want to do it, and actually, getting to the start line, whether it's the start line of the Clipper Race, whether it's taking your first step at the bottom of Mount Kilimanjaro, whether it's sitting in the rowboat and taking your first row across the Atlantic, or whatever it is. It's, once you're on that start line, it's almost easy. You've done all your prep, you've got your kit, you've got whatever you've got, whether you're physically fit enough or not, you're there, and all you can do is put one foot in front of the other and make a start. But it's the getting to the start point that kind of, like I had with my first career break, kind of thinking, oh God, I've got to rent my house out. I need to organise this. I've got to do that. So many of those things can be pitfalls. And, if you are in a weak moment, it's easy for things like that to seem bigger than your initial reaction, your initial kind of gut, I really want to do this. And I think that's the hard thing. And that's where, I say to people now, don't try and do it on your own. It might be a solo adventure, it might be your adventure, but do try and use friends to keep you on the straight and narrow. I always say to people, tell as many people, if you're like me, tell as many people as you can that you're going to do this, because I hate to lose face over anything. So if I've said to someone I want to do it, I really, even if I'm having a wobble, I really don't want to be seen to be beaten by something. So, somebody then comes along and says, oh, how are your plans for this going? And even if I'm having a wobble, I have to go, yeah, fine, no problem. Yep, it's all happening. And then I have to go home and go, right, I really need to make it happen now. But I think using your friends, it's women, I think especially, in my experience, women are the copers. We're the ones who try to help everyone else. We're the ones who try to cope and do things on our own. And, we're not necessarily great at asking for help. And I think that there are times like this when everything does seem a bit too big and you kind of don't know how to put the next thing in place, how to organize this. I think one of the things I've learned is actually it's okay to kind of go, actually, guys, even if it's just come around, sit down, can I just tell you how hard I'm finding it to kind of make the next step forward, or the fact that I'm stuck and I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this, even if you're not technically asking for help, but you just can say to someone, I really want to do this adventure, but I'm really stuck and I don't know where to go next, or how to get the funds, or how to figure this bit out, or how to logistically organize this. Because I think people will want to help. And, if you had a friend and she came to you and said, I'm really stuck, I need some help, you would absolutely help her. So why do we kind of worry about asking for help ourselves? And I think that's a really key thing. I think especially as we get older, I think really using the friendships and the connections that you've got to kind of help you, and taking on a challenge is a really great thing, and it doesn't have to be sailing around the world. It might be walking the Pennine Way, or doing the London Marathon, or the London 100 bike ride, or whatever it is, whatever it is you want to do. I think, it's just about making the decision and really trying your best to hold firm to it and not be derailed by what I call normal life.
Yeah. I mean, so you headed down for your training week, absolutely loved the sailing. How long was it from that training week to actually starting the first legs? How much time did you have to do all of that preparation and get yourself mentally and physically prepared and sort out your kit and everything?
So it was about 9 months actually. So I had my interview in the June 2008. I did my first training in the October. I did my second training in the February 2009, and then third training in the June, I think. So I had to, having sort of said I was going to have a bank loan for one leg, and then decided to do the full circumnavigation, I had to remortgage my house to do that. Now, I was already part way through completely remodeling the downstairs. It was a big renovation project, so I'd already got some money from the bank for that. So I kind of halved what I was going to allocate to that, gave half of it straight away to my Clipper Race costs, and then remortgaged again and got a bit more out to help towards the next cost. So I had 9 months, yes, but I was doing a really busy, involved job at the time. I needed to finish renovating the house because the only way I could be away for a year was, again, to rent my house out. And in order to get it rented out, I had to finish rebuilding it, basically. So I decided to do that. So that was a big, big project as well. I'd also decided that although I was kind of, struggling to fund it and having to remortgage my house and stuff to do it, I still felt like I was in a really privileged position to be able to do that. And I felt like I wanted to give something back to the community through taking part. And I'd asked to be on the local boat again, so the Hull and Humber boat. So I went about trying to set up an education project for the local schools as part of the race, because the race, running from sort of August, September through to June, July, runs across a whole educational year. So I wanted to try and set up some kind of learning for kids so that they could follow the race and get something from their school curriculum lessons and somehow tie that into the race as well. And it took me, 6 months of trying with all the local education authorities and couldn't get any interest from anyone. In the end, it was a contact with a local college who got very involved, decided that their sixth form students could make a big project out of this. So they actually came up with lesson plans designed for kids in 4, 5 and 6. So we produced between us a whole education project and calendars that went out to every child in years 4, 5 and 6 across the whole of East Yorkshire and North East Lincolnshire. So that was a big project. And I also decided, in terms of trying to raise money for some charities as well, that I was going to organise a big summer ball at the start of the summer before the race and raise money for charity there. So I had about 3 hours sleep, I think, from about January 2009 through to June or July 2009, and almost had a complete and utter meltdown over what I'd taken on and what I said I would do, and really struggled with trying to sell tables for this ball to local businesses, trying to get this education project going and get the house sorted and keep doing my job. But actually, that, in a weird way, that was probably one of the things that saved me, because I didn't have any time at all to think, I'm about to sail around the world. Oh my God, what am I doing? So I had no time at all to think, I'm okay, Southern Ocean, 40, 50-foot waves, huge storms. So I kind of literally stepped onto the boat without really any kind of preconceptions, just complete confidence in my training, my fellow crew, and a complete open mind. I had no idea what to expect, and therefore I wasn't disappointed.
Tell us about that first day, that first step, stepping onto the boat, knowing that you were going to be part of this incredible round the world challenge, circumnavigating the globe, undertaking this incredible once in a lifetime experience. I mean, what was that like? Take us back to that day.
It's weird to pinpoint it to a day, actually, because there's all of the boats were into Hull, which is where the race started and finished from that year. All of the boats were in there for a week before, so we'd sailed the boats up the week before, and we'd been working on the boats in the marina in Hull. There'd been a huge amount of events and things going on. So all my family were up to wave me off. All my kind of work colleagues and friends were there. Hull was absolutely rammed with people from the night before, ready for race start day. So, we'd had 15 of us for supper in a restaurant the night before, where my next door neighbours and my next door neighbours' kids had done, bless them, they'd done bun sales and stuff but throughout the course of the year to raise money towards the charities that I was raising money for, and everyone was completely behind it. I think by the time we got to race start day as a team of people, when we sort of final bags moved onto the boat, it was we just couldn't wait to get going. Actually, we felt really ready. But I think for the people that we left behind, it was, they were excited for us, but for them, they were much more nervous and anxious about, I remember looking into my mum's eyes, and I think she thought she was never going to see me again. For them, it just seemed such a bigger thing. There's someone they knew, and they hadn't been through the training that they've been through. They hadn't been through all the preparation they've been through. It was suddenly this person that they know as a daughter or, sister or friend or work colleague, is taken out of that role and put into this role of, Parson, who's on a racing yacht, is about to go off racing around the world. and they won't be back for nearly a year. So it's a real mixture of excitement, can't wait to get going, really not knowing what we're going to face on this crazy adventure. But, you know, I didn't really have any real kind of nerves or wondering whether what I was doing was right or not. You know, it was absolutely the right thing for me at the time. I couldn't wait to start and to kind of really, experience everything that it was going to be. But as I said, it was at that point, I think from the day when you step foot on the boat, the day you start that first adventure, all of those other worries that you've had about getting there have gone at that point. And this is now just about starting it. And, you know, there's been so much prep, just getting going. And actually, once we're out, all the boats have left the marine and we're all milling, getting ready to the start line. Actually, then we're just concentrated on sailing the boat. You know, there's a lot to be done. There's sails to be hoisted and trimmed and courses to be checked. So actually, you're just very, very focused on the kind of detail of what your job is at that time. So, but yeah, as the boat left the marina from Hull that day, you know, there were hundreds and thousands of people there waving us off. And I remember actually, as we pulled out, there were a few friends that I hadn't seen. And they told me in a note afterwards that they'd been struggling to get through all the traffic to see me. And as we were going out through the lock gates, I heard my name screamed by my friend Annalie, and her and Caroline had just managed to get through the crowd and were waving like crazy at me just to be able to sort of say goodbye. And then further up the river, it was about a mile further up the river, they'd found another spot with a bigger group of friends, and there was this massive banner that they were holding up for me, cheering me on, wishing me luck on my journey. So it's a very emotional day, kind of looking back at it, because it was such a huge adventure and has been, you know, a massive part of my life ever since. You know, that was a life-changing adventure for me.
When did reality set in? When did sort of the emotions calm down? When did you get into your routine? And when was it suddenly like, oh my God, this is my life now, living on, I don't know how big the boat is, whether it's 60 foot, 80 foot, 120 foot, however big. You know, how was it when reality stuck in for you?
I think when you set out on something like that, I think we'd done weeks of training, so we'd spent in total, you know, no more than 6 or 7 days on a boat on a training week up until that point. So the first 7 days in a way were a bit like a training week. There could be a training week. The difference is that at every move that we did, every time we hoisted a sail or turned the boat, it counted towards race points. So we're racing against the other boats. So we were very conscious. That made us a bit more nervous about everything that we did. Were we getting it right? Were we getting it wrong at that point? So it was quite a difficult first 3 weeks, actually. I think not necessarily because of the bigger adventure, but actually we did very much have to settle in as a team into becoming a team, becoming a family unit, and really figuring out the nitty-gritty of how we were going to live on this boat. It's a 68-foot yacht, and in a way the sailing was not the easy part, because we were still very nervous about how to trim the sails right, how to get the best boat speed. Were we really on the right course? You know, were we helming correctly? Were we managing to hold a straight line? Because that's, you know, again, fast. But actually the kind of figuring out the jobs and the routine and how to manage the cooking and the food and the cleaning and just how we all work together, and whether we got the systems right, whether, you know, it was right that somebody should spend, you know, all day cooking and also do cleaning within that job, or should we move the cleaning to a different shift or rota? And it was quite hard emotionally, I think, for a lot of us. By the time we got to sort of the third week in, especially as it was getting much hotter, we were getting down towards the doldrums then, so getting very airless, extreme heat, so difficult to sleep on board the boat. I think we were all just getting a little bit agitated. It was our first time of being together for that long. Very easy in the heat to kind of start finding fault with each other. So I think that whole of that leg was really a real eye-opener. So we sailed down to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So probably week 3, I think, is when reality really kicked in terms of we really have to figure out how to live together on a boat of this size and how to sort it out. And we did go through a few teething things, and there are a few people whose tempers frayed, and a few people that had to kind of give themselves a good talking to. And although I wasn't one of them, I didn't like it. I wasn't comfortable with that atmosphere, but we got past it and we moved on. And I think from that point onwards, every leg after that was much, much easier. The conditions might have been more difficult, but actually by that time, there were kind of 8 or 10 of us that had been through figuring out how we make the systems of working and living together work, if that makes sense. And we just knew what to expect from then on. And after that, every time somebody new joined the boat, because there was probably, I don't know, maybe 5 people on average new to the team, each new leg, as people jumped on and jumped off, we were then able to make it much easier for them to get settled into that life and that routine, because there were 8 of us, 8 or 10 of us that they could ask, and that we could help, and we could kind of mentor them and buddy up with them and get them into the routine much quicker. But I think it took a real kind of 3 weeks to fight our way through. This is how life is going to be for the next 10 months, and that was almost one of the hardest parts of the challenge. Big storms and huge seas and squalls and, boats really heeling over and sails getting ripped, that they're big and challenging stuff, but you kind of expect that. And nobody can really explain to you the intricacies of really having to adapt to a very different life on board, a very different dynamic, different jobs, different roles, and people really just trying to find their place on board the boat and kind of reset your expectations of what life is going to be like. And I think that was definitely one of the hardest parts of the challenge for me.
Yeah. I mean, thinking back, I'm sure you had incredible memories, but is there a memorable day or a situation that happened, either good or bad, that stands out for you?
There were a couple of real memorable days, actually. I mean, there are lots of fantastic, almost every day was a fantastic moment, because every day you were either on watch at sunrise or sunset. And those moments were just glorious, because in the middle of the ocean to see the sunrise or the sunset is a truly fantastic thing. It's like nothing else. The colors are amazing, this huge expanse of ocean and sky, truly amazing. We saw pods and pods of dolphins. There was one point on the way up to Singapore, and we've been used to seeing pods of 20 or 30 dolphins at a time. We're already a bit, don't wake me up if you see a dolphin, but wake me up if you see a whale, at that stage. But there was one day where a pod of kind of 30 or 40 dolphins came in, and another pod of 30 or 40 dolphins came in. And for about an hour, the sea, as far as you could see it, was full of dolphins. And they were these kind of, I don't know if that's a technical or proper name for them, these spinner dolphins, because they were leaping out of the air and spinning and somersaulting and back in again. But I've never seen anything like that, probably before or after. That's one of the kind of the nice memories. In terms of challenging times, which are, again, times that we were, in retrospect, most proud of, being in the Southern Ocean in huge waves and huge storms, and having to do a sail change on the bow when the bow of the boat is literally disappearing beneath waves every kind of 20 seconds, and the force of the water that comes over the boat. You're on safety lines and tethers attached to the boat, but if when a wave comes over you, if you're not holding onto something fixed on the boat, that wave will pick you up and it will carry you down to the back of the boat, as far as your line will carry you, so the huge forces of water, and having to do sail changes on the bow in conditions like that, on the face of it was quite scary. But actually, in my experience, by the time you were picked up by the third wave and have that experience of being, your whole body picked up and shifted down the boat and completely drenched in water, it sort of became laughable. It became one of those screamingly ridiculous moments where you're laughing your head off, saying, why on earth did I pay a ridiculous amount of money to do this? And kind of the answer is, as you're saying it, because it's just huge fun. It's tough, it's challenging, but the sense of achievement when you get that sail changed and you're back to the safety of the cockpit, and remind yourself you're in the middle of the Southern Ocean on a racing yacht, and you've just done a sail change with 4 or 5 other guys, most of which had never sailed before. It's a crazy, ridiculous, amazing, proud moment. I think one of the other things, the hardest challenges for us, but really brought us together as a team, was in the North Pacific. So further down the race, this is the big North Pacific from China across to the west coast of America. It's the biggest, longest test of any of the legs, really. It's big seas, and actually for us it was much bigger than the Southern Ocean. It's not normally that way, but we were in huge conditions. We were in 90-foot waves. When you were in the peak of one wave, in the trough of one wave, the peak of the next wave was taller than the mast, and we have 90-foot masts on these boats, so huge seas. So the sight of those will be etched on my mind forever. And I remember sitting next to, being on the helm. So I was steering the boat. We had very little, I think we probably just had a storm jib up, so a tiny handkerchief of a sail, and we're still doing 8 and 9 knots in these big seas. The skipper was sat next to me. I think there was one other crew on deck. Everyone else was in the relative safety of below deck, and I was helming, and I looked up in front of the boat, and I was used to seeing big sort of waves. And at one particular time, there was just what appeared to be a huge vertical wall of water in front of us. It was an enormous wave that you couldn't really see the sides of or above. It just took in your whole of your peripheral vision. I remember turning to our skipper Piers and saying, what do I do now? Because I didn't know whether I had to try and steer around it or whether it was a technique. And he just looked at me, shrugged his shoulders and said, hold on. and we just, I didn't know whether the boat would go through it, kind of like you pass through a wall of water, whether it would climb it or what. And we did, as we approached it, the boat started to climb, it started to sail up this wave. And because it was so steep, the boat was getting more and more vertical, and we were literally all holding on to fix things on the boat. And I remember, this must only be in the course of a few seconds, in reality, but going through my mind, what is going to happen now? It feels like we're going to do a loop-the-loop. Clearly, we can't loop the loop because the water doesn't go over the top. So can a boat fall off a wave? Can you fall backwards off a wave? And all these things were going through our mind. And as we got further and further up this wave and got steeper and steeper and more vertical, the density of the water is less at the top, and the bow just suddenly pushed through the top part of the wave and then careering sort of vertically down the other side. But just the image of that will stay in my mind forever. This just insanely almost vertical wall of water. And, I wasn't really scared. I was just curious. I was like, well, what's going to happen now? And it was just one of those moments that you kind of think, I was a non-sailor. I'm on a comparatively small boat when you're looking at this wall of water with a great team of people on board, and to have experienced things like that so few people get to experience, and to have those memories, that sense of achievement, that sense of pride. And we did, we had very difficult conditions across the rest of that North Pacific crossing. Our skipper ended up actually breaking his leg. He was picked up by one of these waves, moved down the back of the boat, and he was 6'9", sorry, and he the bottom half of his leg went the wrong side of a stanchion post and broke his leg. So we ended up having to look after him for 24 hours whilst we joined up with the Japanese Coast Guard and got him medevaced off. And then we had a standby skipper transferred onto our boat from one of the other boats. But actually, we kind of really sailed that boat between us as a team. There was very little input from from the skipper. We were so bonded as a crew by then. We all individually could play certain roles. So not one of us could have skippered that boat, but as a team between us, we knew how to sail that boat in big conditions across the North Pacific. And I think for me, the proudest moment out of the whole race will be seeing the Golden Gate Bridge. We sailed into San Francisco, and the moment where we were all on deck and saw the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time in the dusk, knowing the challenges that we'd had across that big ocean, and knowing that as a team of people we'd come together and kind of met those challenges and, you know, sailed across one of the biggest expanses of water in the world. That was, truly emotional moment. I think we all stood on deck and just sort of hugged, you know, a bit teary-eyed, you know, not sad, but just kind of, you know, look at what we've managed to do. It was a truly great moment. My single biggest sense of achievement for sure was crossing the North Pacific with my teammates.
Yeah. Oh my God, just incredible to hear what you've been through. You know, the toughness, the challenge, you know, what it was like for you being out there and facing that wall of water. I mean, there's obviously been a little bit of time now since you completed the race. Taking that time to reflect and look back, what do you think that you learned from going on that experience and having that experience?
What did I learn from it? I think I learned a lot about myself. I think I knew myself reasonably well. It's interesting. I say this a lot. I was never an unconfident person as such. You know, I've never been a completely sort of shrinking violet, not because I have confidence in who I am, I think, but I've always had confidence that if I work hard, I can do things. You know, and I am a worker. You know, I've always worked hard at things. So I've always been sort of reasonably confident. But actually, I think I understood myself better from taking part in this. You know, you are completely stripped down on an ocean racing yacht. You just have to be yourself. You know, you've left the job behind. You've left your family behind. You've left every kind of preconception about you behind. You are just who you are, with your ability to think and your ability to do and your ability to react to situations. And that's all you've got on the boat. So I did learn a lot about myself in terms of, you know, how I cope under pressure. I learned a lot about my humanity. I think I learned a huge amount about my own judgments on other people. You know, I did have my eyes opened. I think I live by pretty hard standards by myself. You know, I set myself quite high standards of expectation, and I think I joined the race in a way expecting those same standards of everyone else. And I think I really had to learn that other people have their own standards and they're not the same as mine. And some, you know, will expect much more of themselves. Some will expect less. Some have big aims and ambitions. Some have fewer aims and ambitions. And actually, you know, that those differences are what make us all fantastic and what make us work as a team. And that, you know, if somebody else is happy doing one thing and that's enough for them, and I'm happy doing 5 things and that's enough for me, and somebody else is happy doing 10 things and that's enough for them, that's great. As long as we're all happy doing what we're doing, that's the great thing. You know, it's and you know, I might not be happy doing one thing, I might not be happy doing 10 things, but that's okay. You know, people do want different things from life and have different aims and ambitions. So I think I really learnt about my own expectations of other people. I think I'm a lot more tolerant of people's differences. I think I'm probably a kinder person for it. I love being on the water and I love sailing for sure. Learned so much about sailing, you know, and so much about the wind and the weather and all of the sailing skills that come from that. I there's funny little lessons that I take away from the race, what I call small things, but things like, you in order to clean your teeth on the boat, the fresh water is very limited because you fill your water tanks, and they have water makers, but they make water very slowly, so you manage fresh water very quickly. So I'm pretty sure before I went on the race, when I clean my teeth, I'd turn the tap on, leave it running whilst I clean my teeth. Now I wet my toothbrush, and the tap goes off straight away. And when I shower, I wet myself, and the tap goes off. I soap and I wash my hair, and then the tap goes back on again. So I'm much more careful about water usage. I'm much more careful about electricity usage, because again, that's in very short supply on the boat. You have to manage your use of everything. I'm much better at dealing with tasks that I don't want to do quickly. That we have a rule on the boat: if you see something that needs doing, you do it. You do it then and there. You don't put it off for tomorrow, because what is a small thing now will very quickly become a bigger thing on a boat and a bigger job. And I think we've all done that in life, don't we? It's a little job which you really don't want to do, so you put off and you put off, and it might not become a bigger job, but in your mind it becomes a bigger job. It becomes more detested and more kind of anticipated. And actually, if we just done it straight away, you wouldn't have then had 2 days or 2 weeks worrying about it and stressing about it. You would have just been done and gone. So I'm much better at dealing with the little things that I don't want to deal with now. I am definitely less of a I can't do this person. I do have times, like everybody, when I'm just doing a little DIY at home, and I'm trying to do stuff with electrics, and it didn't kind of work out right the first time round. And before I might have sat down and had a little sob and thought, I can't do this. And now I kind of make myself a cup of tea and kind of go, okay, you can do this. Think what do you need to do? What do you need to check? And calm myself down, and then I'll go and have another go with a fresh head and make things work. So I am I've got more confidence in my own abilities. And I think I started this off by saying about learning about myself and saying I had confidence in what I can do, and not necessarily confidence in who I was at the start of the race. Now I think I have confidence in who I am. I am who I am. I've got my faults, absolutely, like we all have. But I think I have real confidence in who I am as a person, not what I can do, but who I am. And I think taking part in something like this, and especially doing the full circumnavigation for such a long period of time, where you have to live on your own resources and you have to work within a team, I think you can't fail but have real confidence in who you are once you achieve something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Oh, so much good information in there and top tips. I mean, the one that stands out for me is actually just doing the little jobs, because I think I heard somewhere, if you can do it in 5 or 7 seconds, just do it right there and then, instead of waiting to do it. Now, Della, you actually work now for the Clipper Yacht Race. How did that come about?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So I did my own circumnavigation, and then I did come back. I said to you, one of the reasons I've got stuck into the ruck, I came back to my job, having had my second rubric from them, and it did actually do what I wanted it to do. It gave me the confidence to say, actually, I don't know what my next step is now, but I know I need to leave, and I know I need to move on and kind of break my ties with my old life and start a new life. So 9 months later, I was packing up my house, and the house that remortgaged I'd sold, and I had a 5-bedroom house, and I sold everything. I didn't want to have any ties and wanted to be free of having to pay a mortgage and storage and stuff. So I got my entire 5-bedroom house down to 10 boxes, which went to my mum's loft. And then a month before I was due to leave my job, I was phoned by the TV production company that had made the TV series on my race, and they offered me a job to go round again, working as part of the documentary team. So I went round again the following year for the next Clipper race, making the TV documentary. I came back from that, still keen on sailing, did my yacht masters, did my sailing qualifications, became a cruising instructor, did a few jobs in the industry, which was my intention. I was going to spend the next 5 years working in the sailing industry. Unfortunately, my mum got diagnosed with cancer that following Christmas. So because I wasn't tied into a specific job, I was going from sailing job to sailing job, I took the decision to put that on hold and come home and look after her. And again, I feel privileged that I was in a position to be able to do that. She had a year basically from diagnosis to end of life, and I was able to spend that year with her, doing lots of great things, helping her through her treatment, and had quality time and better understanding of our relationship through doing that. And I think it was really in the 6 months after her passing away that I was dealing with her estate, selling a house, going through all the stuff, that I suddenly thought, blimey, I need to find a job. And I didn't at that point feel sort of emotionally that I wanted to jump on another boat and kind of go off with a bunch of strangers or whatever. I felt like I needed to have a home and a base at that point, having gone through that. And that's the point where the job came up with the Clipper team. So they were looking for someone else to join their recruitment team. I was approached and asked if I was interested, and it just came at the right time, really. As I say to people now, I've been talking about the Clipper race since I did it in 2009. I thought I may as well get paid for talking about it. And I love it. I love my job. I've been there. I know what the race delivers. I know how tough it can be, but I also know, what a great adventure it is, the friendships and the bonds that you make, the fun that you have, just what it can do for you as a person. So, my job to interview, to take applications from people, to do presentations about the race, to help people right from that thinking about it stage to getting their application form in, to them then being offered a contract, and then talking them through when people, often do have, I don't know if I'm ready to sign it. I'm worried about this. I don't know if I can take my time off work and all of these things. I've been there. I know how hard it is to get from the I want to do it to the start line. So I really feel like I have something to offer in terms of helping crew get from that I really want to do it to actually, seeing them step foot on their boat at the start of the race, almost a changed person at that point in terms of how much confidence they have in themselves and their abilities and their fellow teammates. And then a huge kick at seeing people when they come back from their leg or at the end of the whole race when there's big crew parties and everyone's there. And the change, I just think, in terms of the confidence, the joy, people sometimes leave their jobs, some people sometimes change jobs, and that's the reason why they're doing it. Sometimes people just go back to the job they were doing before, but they have a new lease of life, they've got a new spring in their step. You can see that it's, they've got the balance right between work and something for them. And so many people say to me when they apply, I feel a bit guilty about spending the time on the money on myself, but I really feel like I need some me time. And I think this is people realizing that actually, we weren't put on this planet to get in the car, do that daily commute, to go into the office, to slog our guts out, to come home, to cook, to clean, to wash the car, and to go back and do it all again. That is not what life is about. There has to be a balance. Yes, we have to work to earn money, to put food in our bellies, to put a roof over our head. But, it doesn't have to be a Mercedes car. It doesn't have to be, a mansion. It's a means to an end. And I think getting the balance between what we spend money on in terms of possessions, in terms of a bigger house, a bigger car, and the balance between spending money and time on ourselves to give ourselves real quality experiences that we will benefit from for the rest of our lives. I think the balance, a lot of us have got that wrong, and I'm very pleased that I've seen that in various stages of my life and tried to get that balance right again. And that's what I see in other people. I see them come back and, their relationships are better, their family relationships are better, they're better with their kids, and their parents are better because, you might be doing the challenge on your own, but you take everyone with you. People become proud of you. They see you grow in confidence. You have something to discuss. They've supported you. They're so proud of you. It's not just family, but friends, but colleagues, but everyone. Everybody benefits, I believe, from you taking part in this, as long as you get those agreements in place first off that, you know, I'm allowed to have time out here, whether it's with work or family. It's beneficial all around. I truly believe it is. And I think whether it's this particular challenge, doing the Clipper Around the World Yacht Race, or, as I said before, climbing Kilimanjaro or walking the Pennine Way, or doing whatever you want to do, it sometimes feels like a hard road to take to take the step on to doing it. But, you know, you will never, ever regret it. I promise you won't regret it. So just, any advice to anyone listening up there, just do it. Find a way, ask your friends, ask for help, but just do it, because you will not regret doing it. But I guarantee in 10 years' time, you will regret not doing it.
Absolutely. And Della, where is the best place for people to find more information out about you and the Clipper Around the World Yacht Race?
So there's not lots of information about me. You can Google me for sure, but the Clipper Around the World Yacht Race, we've got our own website. There's loads of information on there. So the current race is they've just left Cape Town at the moment, so they're about to race through the Southern Ocean, one of those big oceans that I was talking about. So if you go on clipperoundtheworld.com, there's lots of information there for potential crew in terms of, you know, how to apply, the details of the different legs and timings. There's also the race viewer, so you can look at the current race, so you can actually look at the boats. It's updated every hour. You can click on the boats, you can see how fast they're going, you can see the position. We have daily reports from both the skippers of every boat and also the crew. One member of the crew takes it in turn to write a crew blog each day. There's loads of video on the site, and then on our Clipper Around the World Yacht Race YouTube site as well, if you kind of want to see some great footage from the races. So there's lots of information on there. If people want to get in contact with me directly to talk about the race, then best thing they can do is either click on the website, and there are some asks, so you can click on and send an email from the website, or you can just email dparsons@clipper-ventures.com, and that's dparsons@clipper-ventures.com, and that's my direct email address, and I'll happily send you some information. If anybody, I think my old website is still somewhere on the internet. So if you want to read my old blogs, I did blog for most of my way around my first adventure. If you want to read my old blogs from 2009 and 10 race, I think it's still up there. So it's dellaroundtheworld.com. So you can see what I did there with the whole Clipper thing. dellaroundtheworld.com. And if you go on to race blogs, I can't remember, it's been ages, you can read the blogs from my original race back in 2009 there.
Oh, fantastic. Della, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about your amazing journey and story, and be such an inspiration for other women out there who are thinking about taking on their own adventures and challenges. Thank you for coming on.
Pleasure. Thank you, Sarah.
Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Della. I have also got some more recommendations of incredible women that you can listen to on the Tough Girl podcast, all talking about sailing in some form or the other. So if we go back to 2015, I spoke with Ellen Hath-Davies, who has sailed across the Pacific, so definitely well worth a listen. In 2016, we spoke to Emily Penn, who is a skipper and ocean advocate. Very, very fascinating story as well. In 2016, we also spoke to Sally Barkow, Barkow, who's an Olympic sailor. And in 2017, so earlier this year, we spoke with Hannah Stoddle, who's a 4-time Para-Olympian and a triple world champion. So take a listen to Ellen Hath-Davies, Emily Penn, Sally Barkow, and Hannah Stoddle, especially if you are interested in sailing and learning more about the challenges involved going out onto the different oceans. Also, let me tell you what we have got coming up over the next couple of weeks. We have got some incredible women coming on the Tough Girl podcast, like we do every single Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. So coming on the 19th of December, we have Laura Kennington, who is a British adventure athlete who has got a passion for the endurance capability of the human body. She's done some very fascinating challenges. And one of the challenges that she did was based over in Russia, where she got a little bit too much overexposure on social media, and it actually got quite threatening. So a very sort of interesting story about how she handled that and what she decided to do. On the 26th of December, Boxing Day, we're going to be listening to Megan Hine. And you may be thinking, Megan Hine, I recognize that name, but I don't know the face. But Megan is a survival expert. She's an expedition leader and she's an adventure catalyst. Megan actually works very closely with Bear Grylls. We don't actually talk about Bear on the podcast, partly because obviously it's a podcast about women, but also I wanted to focus on Megan, her journey, how she got to become an expedition leader, how she got to be doing what she's doing, what the good points of her job are, what are the challenging situations of her job, and what she's learned from that. So we've got some awesome episodes coming up. Laura Kennington on the 19th, Megan Hind on the 26th, and we have New Year. We're going to be kicking it off with Beth French, who is a phenomenal open water swimmer. So very, very excited about our future guests. As always, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate you guys listening in every Tuesday to these incredible women. Please do share it with your friends. Please tell your friends, show other people how to listen to a podcast, tweet about it, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram. I love it, obviously, seeing Tough Girl Podcast promoted, but it is just about sharing the message and introducing more women and men to the Tough Girl Podcast so they can be inspired by these incredible women. There's now over 130 episodes of the podcast. There are hundreds and hundreds of hours of content. So if you've got a particular area or a particular interest, you can go and find that. So whether that is swimming, sailing, triathlons, mountaineering, whether it's expeditions, making a change in your life, whether it's running, and that could be ultra endurance running, it could be going from a 5K to running a London marathon to running 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert. So there is a massive variety of women on the Tough Girl Podcast, and I'm so excited by who we've interviewed this year, and I'm also really excited about what we've got coming up in 2018. So please do make sure you hit that subscribe button to make sure that you get the updates when they come through. Big thank you as always to my incredible patrons. I could not do this without you. If you want to support the Tough Girl Podcast, then please do check out Patreon, Patreon/Tough Girl Podcast. Donate $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. Why don't you kickstart January by sponsoring the Tough Girl Podcast? That would be a phenomenal thing to do. Guys, have an amazing day, whatever it is that you are doing, and I will speak to you soon. All the information on the show notes can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com. And if you are new to the podcast, you can find out more about me, my adventures, my challenges, my books at toughgirlchallenges.com. All right, big love, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.